Hi, Sarah Saby here with Chalk with Sarah, and for today's video I'm going to do a t-shirt with a sugar skull stenciled on it in the permanent inks for Chalk Couture. So I have my ink mat here. You can see this has been used, which it works really well. What I want to do is put my t-shirt over this because this holds everything in place so that you don't get any slipping or sliding. The trickiest part on some of the t-shirts is to get this inside without it sticking all over. So I'm going to just kind of fold my mat in half, and I'm going to slide it in through the bottom of the t-shirt. There's smaller mats too, and I have one that's narrower, but I prefer this mat when I'm doing t-shirts. I don't know why, I just do. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of open this up inside of the t-shirt, and I'm trying to keep the seams on the edge of this mat. And so I'm going to take it over here and do the same thing and push it down. And then I'll show you what we do to get this all nice and smooth and worked out, because look, these mats really stick. Okay. Because I want to, when I do my sugar skull, and this is the first time I've done a sugar skull, there's going to be 4 layers to this t-shirt. I want to make sure that I'm keeping my t-shirt nice and flat and lined up properly. So let me get my inks out of the way that I'm going to be using for the day, and my squeegee, and we're going to just take this step by step. If you already know how to put your t-shirt on a mat and that, you can fast forward through this. But what I want to do is get the wrinkles out, and these mats, the ink mats, are really good to get this held tightly and remove the wrinkles. Sometimes you might have to come back up from the bottom and pull down again, but I'm going to show you what I do, and it seems to work out pretty good for the projects that I've done. Once I have my t-shirt in place, you can rub it with your hands like this, and that'll stick to that ink mat. A couple reasons for the ink mat. One, so that the ink doesn't bleed through this side of the t-shirt onto your back side of the t-shirt, so it's protecting your back side of the t-shirt. And again, the other reason is to keep your t-shirt in place so it's not moving around while you're doing the inking. Okay, so I have that in place. Looks pretty good to me. I've got my seams, like I said, lined up on the outside. The other thing I do is I take this larger squeegee and I just kind of run it across my t-shirt just to make sure it's adhered really good and that there's no wrinkles in it. And when you get down farther, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to take the stencil down that far, but I like to just kind of do a double rub. So I've got a nice smooth surface there for the stencils. This is the stencil. You can see it's a large stencil. This is the sugar skull stencil. So I'm going to be starting here with this one. I'm going to cut it out. This will be my second, my third, and my fourth. I'm not going to do anything with these other 4 pieces for the t-shirt. So we're going to see what this turns out like. These stencils, again, they're silk screen stencils. They are reusable, of course. So what you want to do is off to the side here, outside of the camera, I have a little pan of water. So when I'm done with one of the stencils, I put it right into the water so that it can start soaking. And all I'm going to do is cut out the stencil I want first. Actually, I'll cut all of them out and just lay them in the order I'm going to do it. So there's guides on here for where you cut. And this will be the base of the sugar skull. And I'm going to just come from this angle and cut this one out first. I think I just heard a woodpecker outside my window here. And So this is the one we're gonna do first. So it's gonna look kind of neat. My top of my t-shirt's up here, so I'll be turning that around, but I just want to show you what these stencils look like. So once we get that layer down and we do a quick dry with a hair blower, and this is going to become permanent on the t-shirt as well. Once that layer is on and dry, then this layer will come up next. And then once that layer is dry, and this kind of sound, I hope this doesn't sound too complicated for you because it's really easy. It's just a matter of lining up the next stencil on top of the previous stencil that you've put on. So once I have the first stencil, that'll be the second stencil. This one that I'm going to cut right here will end up being the third stencil. So that's the third one. And then this will be the fourth one. Okay, so 4 layers on this project. I'm going to put the rest of that stencil down on the floor to get it out of my way. And I thought, since I'm using a white t-shirt, the base of my stencil is going to end up being this first one in black. I'm going to do it all in black. And then the next one I'm going to do in yellow. This one I'm going to do in an orange. And the last one I'm going to do in teal. So these are the Chalk Couture inks. They are permanent once they're heat set. Recommend that you wash your t-shirts before you do it, just to make sure there's no shrinkage or anything like that. And once you're done heat setting these, you can wash it as many times as you want, and they'll come out looking just as fresh. One thing that I like to do before I start using the stencils, these stencils, again, they're reusable and they're silk screen. I like to take them and just get a little bit of the stickiness off, because these are very sticky stencils. And so you just peel it off, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I have a towel sitting off here to the side. I just take it, put the stencil on the towel, kind of rub it on there, and what this does is it just removes some of the stickiness. I don't have to remove a lot of it because this is a t-shirt. If I were working on a surface like a galvanized surface, or you know, some of the smoother chalkboards that are out there, I definitely would want to, you know, get rid of some of the stickiness of these stencils so it doesn't leave residue behind on the piece I'm working on. So I'm going to just do this a couple times, just kind of put it on this towel and take some of that away. Okay, so now I'll set my towel aside. Now you could, you know, get tape out and figure out exactly where your stencil should go on that. I kind of eyeball it, and it's worked out pretty good for me. This is a V-neck. I'm gonna keep it up closer to the V. So I'm gonna just move it about right there. I like to leave a little corner up too, just make it easier to take this off once I get the ink on here. So I'm just rubbing it on, and then of course, again, I like to take the big squeegee and just make sure there's no air bubbles in here, because I don't want air bubbles in my stencil on top of my t-shirt. So just run it across, and generally you'd be able to see if there's air bubbles in here, but if you use a squeegee like this, you're pretty much guaranteed that you're not going to have any air bubbles behind it. And again, I've left this little bit of a corner up. Okay, now I'm going to take the black ink, and I'm gonna open it up, and I'm gonna move my water back over here where it's convenient for me. And one other thing that I want right here before I go is this squeegee. I could use the bigger squeegee that I was just using to straighten, you know, make sure there was no air bubbles in the stencil, but I like this one. It's a smaller one, and it seems to me, for me, it's easier to use. Okay, so let's open up the black. First thing we want to do is stir it. And here's a cautionary note. This ink, if you're concerned about making, you know, going too far off the stencil, or, well, I shouldn't even say too far, you don't want to go off the stencil. If that concerns you, you can use painter's tape, you know, the blue painter's tape, and outline the entire edge of the stencil so you don't have to worry about it. This has a pretty good edge. I'm not concerned about it. So I'm just stirring it up. You can see the consistency. It's fairly thin. I mean, it's not where it's dripping, but it's thinner than the chalk paste. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of the ink right on here, and we'll put some there. You're going to find it's not going to take a lot of this ink to get the job done. Sometimes I put a little bit too much on, but the nice thing about Chalk Couture is that you don't waste any of it. So once you move it around, which is what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to just squeegee this down through the design. And I'm not scraping it, I'm just moving the ink to cover the design. And once my design is covered, like it is right now, now I'm going to start squeegeeing it and scraping off the excess. And that's what I mean, you don't waste any of this. So if I put too much on initially, I'm just going to come back here and get rid of it. And now I'm going to start, and I'm going to squeegee this down. And then I'm going to scrape off the excess, and top to bottom. Make sure you go through the whole design. There's where we've got some extra right down there, and I'll pick that up on the way across. And watch your edges on the stencil. You don't want to get black on your white t-shirt, because it's not forgiving. And we'll get rid of this right here. So you can see it takes hardly any ink at all. Okay. So I have that all covered. I'll set my ink aside. And now what we want to do is pull this up. When you're using the stencils, oh, and see what I did? I had some ink on my finger. I'll try a little, see, that drives me nuts. I should have looked before I leapt. Wipe that off with my, dip it in this water over here. So now I might have to try to get that off with a bleach stick. But as I was going to say, when you pull these stencils off, you don't want to stretch the stencil. So you just kind of grab it all either from the top and go down, or from the side and go sideways. All right, so very cool. It's got the skull on there, and that's the first layer. To speed up the drying, because I don't want to put the next layer down on this, and I'm going to get this back so it's flat again. To speed up drying, all you need to do is just use your hair blower. And I happen to have one right next to me. This is going to be a little loud, so I'm going to just not talk for a second. I'll talk for a second right now. All I'm doing is getting this dry enough that I can put the second layer on here. So a little bit more. Okay, Okay, that seems dry. And I'm gonna just kind of swivel this so you can see. And for you to learn too from my mistake, check your fingers before you go and peel off a stencil, because if you get even just a touch of ink on your fingers and it hits your material, it's not fun. So there's the base. You can see right here and right here I've got 2 little drops that were on my fingernail when I did this. So that's the base. Pretty cool. I mean, Chalk Couture does an unbelievable job for detail. Okay, so let's turn this around so I can see what I'm doing here. Get it back where we've got it under the camera. And then I'm going to go to my next stencil. And I'm following the same process as I go along with what I did on the first stencil. I'm going to peel it off, and then I'm going to take off a little bit of the stickiness. This is the next one I'm going to put on. Take off a little bit of the stickiness using the towel, and then center this over the previous stencil that's already on the t-shirt. So let's get a little de-sticking going. And I'm going to do this twice again like I did on the first one. Okay. And the other thing, I'm going to throw my little black stirrer in there and cover up my black ink real quick. Okay. All right, so this is the second stencil. And you think, well, how do I line this up with what's already on there? Well, here's the thing. You can see, and be careful, these things get very sticky. And when that happens, you see that? You gotta run it under water. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm coming back. I swear some days are just like this where that's the first time I put ink on a t-shirt, drips like that or touches. And it's really the first time that I've had one of my stencils where I'm not paying attention and they stick back together, which is a good thing for you to know. I mean, you need to realize that these are highly sticky stencils, these silk screen ones. So take care when you're working with them that you don't do what I just did and fold it over. If you do, it's not the end of the world, which that's why I'm not editing this out of this video, because I want you to see, and I'm just drying the stencil now, I want you to see that you know, you can make mistakes. I do it quite often actually, and not worry about it. So all I did now was just take it and put it back on the towel and dry it. What I was starting to tell you is how do you figure out where to line this up? Well, these two eyes happen to fall in line with the eyes that are on the stencil here. So what I want to do is cover these two up with these two sections right here. So to do this, I'm going to actually stand up and I'm going to kind of pull my stencil up until I see that it's covered. And Doesn't take a lot to play around with this. Just kind of move it so those eyes are in a good spot, it would appear. And again, when you're doing these, nothing has to be exactly perfect. These are pieces of art, I consider, and you might be a little bit off on the eyes, but it's not going to matter when you see the end result. And I'm going to just take this again, get any wrinkles or air bubbles out, especially since I was handling this after having it stick together. Just want to get it going here. Okay, so the areas that we're going to cover with ink are just these white areas here. Everything that's green does not have ink. There's little pieces down here, little pieces here. And again, let's just get it scraped off. And if I weren't videoing this, this is not a long process to do. It actually goes by pretty fast. I'm gonna do yellow for around the eyes. And I'm gonna get one more squeegee here, since I didn't wash off my other one, so it's always kind of nice to have extra squeegees on hand. I'm gonna pull this one up a little bit there, like I did the last time, to make it easy to start pulling it away. You don't have to work as fast with the inks, but you don't want to lollygag either. So this is the yellow. It's really going to take very little. It's only doing around the eyes, a little bit around the nose, and there's a few accent spots on here. So I've got that mixed up. I'm going to just kind of scrape that right there, and that should be more than enough. In fact, I'm going to just scrape what's left right in there. And again, all I'm doing right now is pulling the color down onto the stencil. I'm not scraping or anything. All I want to do is cover up all of the cutouts for this stencil. Then I'll come back and scrape. Just make sure you've got everything covered. And then again, no waste. Come back, scrape all of that ink into your container, and now I'm going to squeegee. Make sure that my ink is pressed down onto my t-shirt. Squeegee again. And some of the design elements, you know, they're small, so you want to make sure you're covering all design elements on the stencil. And there you have it. Now, get the rest of that off of there. Let's pull up this piece. And I will immediately be putting this into that little thing of water I have sitting off to the side. So I'm gonna hold that there, and I'm gonna pull this. And I think this is just so cool doing this stuff. I'm gonna set that in the water over there, let it soak. And get this lifted up a little bit and straighten back out. I just love doing these. So you can see the coloring for the eyes has gone around the eye section. Put those over there in water too, cover up my yellow ink. And I'm gonna do the same thing I did before. I'm going to just use my hair blower and dry this before I put on the next level. So, little noise coming. Okay, Now you could actually stop here too. I mean, this is a pretty cool design in itself. I'll turn it around and show you. I mean, that's looking like a pretty nice little skull, but I want to go further. I want to add more color. So I've done my black base, I've done my yellow, and now I'm going to put the third layer on here. And again, I want to get my thing nice and smooth on here. So layer number 3 coming up. And this is actually going to be inside the eyes. Looks like you got inside the eyes. Maybe these are like eyebrows. I've never done a sugar skull before, but I think they're pretty cool. So let's take this and take it off of the base and save these. You put your stencils back on there once they're dry, once you wash and dry them. So same routine, I'm putting it over here on my towel to get rid of some of the stickiness. And as I let that sit there for a second, this is the color I'm going to be using, the teal ink for the next layer. So we're on layer 3 right now. And I'm gonna get that open and then de-stick this stencil one more time on the towel. And we'll be ready to place it. So you can see it's pretty easy to figure out where to place these because now that I have those 2 layers down, these sections here, and I want to be careful that I don't bend this, these eye sections, I want to get them into the center of the eyes. So I'm going to just kind of pull that up from the bottom and get it right about there. Let's see, what's this bottom look like? And this bottom wants to come up a little bit more on the mouth. So let's see, I'm gonna little playing with it, but it's pretty easy to do. Today's just one of those days for me. So I'm going to pull it up from the bottom until I see the mouth right here. And again, I mean, none of this has to be like perfect, scientifically perfect, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, I like to have it. I like to have it good, but there's so much detail on these that if you were to be a touch off, you're not going to notice it, especially with a sugar skull, because they have a lot of detail. I'm just lining up this eye up here. Left eye seems to be in a good spot. So it's just a matter of coming down. Okay. Put that on there. I'm going to just squeegee it across. So again, any white spots are the ones that are getting filled with the color that we're using. This one I'm using the teal for, and I'm going to just get a couple more squeegees while I'm here, because I didn't have time to wash the ones. If I were doing this by myself and not making a video, it would be much faster, but I like making the videos, so this is fun. Okay, so let's stir up the teal. And I just randomly picked these colors. I mean, I knew black for the base because it was a white t-shirt, but there's so many different colors for Chalk Couture, both in the inks and in the chalk paste, that you can, the possibilities are limitless. Okay, I'm going to take a dab of this, and it's not going to be much because there's not that much that needs to be filled. I'm just going to set it right there in the middle of this. And take the squeegee. Again, I'm just moving the color around, covering up any of the openings for the stencil, pulling it down, making sure I get the mouth down here. There's tiny little dots here and there, which makes the sugar skulls so cool. And that's it. Get them covered, and then we'll come back and scrape. Get rid of my excess right now. And now just scrape off any excess. Put it back in your jar, scrape, jar, scrape, and that looks pretty good right there. Okay, throw my scraper and my stirrer over into the water, and let's see what happens on this layer. Pretty cool. So now we have that color put on. I'll throw this into this other water thing here. And actually, while I'm doing this, just to give me some more room, I have a sink of water already prepared. I'm gonna just take this and move it, and that'll give that just a second to dry too on the skull. Okay, this is really, I've always wanted a sugar skull t-shirt, and I'll flip this around. I'm gonna do a little hair blow dry with it before I put the final stencil on, but just to give you an idea. Again, you can stop at any point, but the more you add, I think the cooler it becomes. All right. Little noise with my handy dandy hair blower just to get this dry before I put the final layer on. Okay, last but not least, the last stencil. And this is gonna actually, it looks like it's gonna color the teeth, the pupils, and a few extra sections here. So, same process. Gonna de-stick it a little bit. Oh, and the last color is gonna be this orange. Don't know why I picked it. I just kind of grabbed my colors and thought that looks kind of good. Take this off of here. Remember, don't let your back stick together. Don't be like me. All right, de-stick. Let's see. I am definitely finding a pen to get that off because I want to wear this. And I'm gonna try to avoid heat setting those two little dots I have up there from the black ink. Okay, let's get this on here. Let's finish this off. All right, teeth, pupils, oops, I'm a little too far left. And if I stand up, it might make it a little bit easier on me. I figure if I get the pupils in spot, the rest kind of comes in play. There we go. Okay. Well, let's see. I'm gonna just scrape that a little bit. Just to get it all in place. Last but not least, the moment we've been waiting for. We're gonna do the orange, and that'll be the final part of this sugar skull. Okay. There's not a lot to cover here either. I mean, there's a lot of little small pieces in that. So I'm just gonna put that right down on there like that. Set it aside and open up another squeegee. You don't have to have all these squeegees. Like I said, if I weren't doing this video, I would just be, and I'm very impatient, I'm cutting this. I would just be using one and rinsing it. But when you're doing a video, I should have had these all open. I should have just had the 4 squeegees ready. Okay, so I just want to pull the ink down and cover up the openings that are part of the stencil. I'm not scraping, I'm just covering. And once I have everything covered, just like that, we'll get rid of the excess and then we'll squeegee it. Okay? Squeegee, remove paste. It's almost hypnotizing. And at the levels that you use of the ink, and I think I said paste before, but this is ink, this will go a long ways. Okay. There we go. And now we do the big reveal. Again, don't pull at a diagonal. You don't want to stretch these. Just pull top to bottom or side to side. Oh my, how cool is that? How cool is that? Let me throw this in water and then I'll show that to you. I really like to take care of my stencils because you get a lot of uses out of the stencils if you care for them properly. And there's not a big deal on caring for them. It's a matter of putting them in water right away, and then I use warm water, and then just rubbing off the ink or the chalk with your fingers until they're nice and clean, and then you just dry them on a towel. And that's all you do. So that's drying a little. And again, remember, clean your fingers. If you see any ink on your fingers, don't touch your t-shirt. I had a little ink, so I made sure I cleaned it off. But look at this. I mean, you can see it from upside down, but let's just put it the right way. That is going to be one cool t-shirt. I'm not going to put you through the rest of the process, but now once you're done with this, you would actually want to heat set it. So if you have a heat press, that's great. If you don't, it's no big deal. You just use an iron on medium heat, and you do 4 minutes aside. So what you do is you remove the ink mat out of here, and then you put a piece of wax paper between the inside of your t-shirt, and you put a piece of wax paper on the top side. You do 4 minutes on the top side, turn it inside out, put the wax paper inside, and I'm sorry, when I say wax paper, I actually mean parchment paper. You put the parchment paper back on the back side that you flipped out, and parchment paper inside, and you heat set it 4 minutes aside, and it's permanent. Throw it in the wash, you're all done. So there's a Sugar Skull t-shirt, and look at the detail on that. I mean, where else are you going to be able to do something like this? Chalk Couture is the coolest thing I have come across. I love it. Okay, if you have any questions, leave comments, etc. And otherwise, I will be making some more real soon. Have a good night.